Halloween night. Sounds fun, right? Kids dressed up as superheroes, princesses, or tiny vampires, running door to door shouting for candy. Laughter, glowing Jacko, lanterns, the smell of sweets and dry autumn leaves. But for me, Alex, the word Halloween now only brings back sheer terror, a haunting memory I can never forget. It happened 2 years ago, when I was 16, a night that completely changed the way I see the world. I remember it vividly. It was 2023. My parents had gone to a Halloween party, leaving me to babysit my little sister, Lily, who was 8. I hated babysitting, especially on Halloween night when all my friends were out having fun. I just wanted to play video games, but Lily was thrilled about her sparkling ice princess costume. Our suburban neighborhood outside Chicago was peaceful and beautifully decorated for Halloween. Jacko, lanterns glowing on porches, fake spiderwebs stretching across bushes, eerie scarecrows guarding the lawns. The sound of kids shouting "trick or treat" mixed with the rustle of dry leaves. It was the perfect Halloween scene, but almost too perfect, as if it were hiding something terrible about to happen. Lily ran into the living room excited. "Alex, it's time to go trick-or-treating. Jessica's waiting outside." I sighed and took off my headset. "All right, Ice Princess. Remember, don't go too far, and only take candy if Jessica's parents are with you. Got it?" She giggled, nodded, and ran out of the house with her friends. Watching her tiny figure disappear behind the maple trees, I suddenly felt uneasy, as if someone was watching me. Through the window, I noticed an old black van parked at the end of the street. The windows were pitch dark. It looked out of place, suspicious. I told myself it was probably just a visitor for one of the neighbors. A few minutes later, while I was watching TV, a loud thump came from the backyard. I jumped. The house fell silent. I crept to the back door and peered through the glass, but saw nothing unusual. "Probably a cat," I muttered to myself, trying to shake off the unease creeping up my spine. From the kitchen window, I saw the van again. The driver's side window was rolled down slightly, as if someone inside was watching the house. The nearby streetlight flickered, then went completely dark for a few seconds. My heart began to race. A voice in my head whispered, "That van isn't normal. It's watching you." Then came the doorbell. Ding dong. I rushed to open the door, thinking Lily had come home. But no one was there, just a single Reese's peanut butter cup sitting on the doorstep. A ding-dong ditch? But who leaves candy behind? The uneasy feeling grew stronger. I shut the door, telling myself it was just a harmless Halloween prank. 15 minutes later, another sound made my blood run cold. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of slow, deliberate knocks on the kitchen window. I crept over and peeked through the curtain. A tall figure in black, wearing a hood, was standing behind the bushes. He was staring directly at the window, his cold gaze piercing through the glass. I stumbled back, trembling, and with shaking hands, I dialed 911. "There's someone in my backyard," I stammered. Before I could finish speaking, the doorbell rang frantically, like someone was pounding on the front door. The stranger in the backyard turned away. The bell stopped, replaced by the sound of heavy footsteps circling the house. I rushed to the living room window. The van's headlights flicked on, beaming straight into the house like the eyes of a monster. The police dispatcher on the phone told me to lock all the doors and hide. I checked Lily's window and froze in horror. Another Reese's candy sat on the windowsill, next to a crumpled note, "I see you." He had been in the backyard. He knew I was here. This wasn't a prank. I crushed the note in my fist, shoving it into my pocket as my heart pounded violently. The sound of a window latch scraping echoed through the air, a slow, creaking noise followed by the faint crack of glass. He was trying to break in. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't my imagination. The man had entered my backyard, left the candy, and written that message. He knew I was here. He knew I was home alone with my sister. He was playing a twisted game, a deadly one. The real nightmare had begun. I backed away from the window, a wave of dread washing over every nerve in my body. It wasn't some harmless Halloween prank anymore. This was real. The candy, the trembling note with the words, "I see you," undeniable evidence. He had gotten into the backyard. He had reached my home. He knew I was inside. My heart pounded so loud it drowned out the 911 operator's voice still speaking through the phone. I grabbed the note and the candy, crushing them together in my hand before stuffing them into my pocket. I didn't want Lily to see them. With the phone still pressed to my ear, I crawled to a corner of the living room, hiding behind the big sofa, forcing myself to breathe quietly. Outside, the laughter of trick-or-treating kids echoed faintly, but now it sounded distant, hollow like a fake soundtrack playing over my real fear. "Try to stay calm, Alex." The 911 operator's steady voice came through, trying to anchor me. "The police are only a few minutes away. You're still safe inside the house, right?" I couldn't answer. My mouth was dry. I felt trapped in a horror movie, except this was real. And I wasn't the hero. I was just a 16-year-old kid trying to keep his little sister safe. Then, the noise outside grew louder, closer. Click, click, click. It wasn't knocking this time. It was prying. I heard metal scraping against the wooden frame, the sharp screech of something forcing its way in. The faint sound of cracking glass followed. Crack! Not a full shatter, but a break. As if he were pressing a sharp object against the pane, slowly adding pressure. He was trying to break the window. My heart froze. I glanced at the clock on the wall. Every second dragged like an eternity. Where were the police? I can hear him prying at the window. I whispered into the phone, my voice trembling. "He's trying to get inside!" "We're on our way. Stay hidden and don't make a sound," the dispatcher's voice barked sharply. I knew I didn't have much time left. Lily would be home any minute now, and I couldn't let him get into the house before she arrived, or worse, while she was already here. I couldn't even imagine what would happen if Lily saw this. I glanced around, my eyes scanning the living room, desperate to find something, anything I could use to defend myself. Then I saw it, my baseball bat leaning in the corner where I always left it after practice. I crept over, wrapping my fingers tightly around the wooden handle, feeling its heavy, cold weight. It was just a bat, but at that moment, it was the only thing that gave me a sliver of courage, the illusion that I could fight back. I moved toward the front door and peeked through the peephole again. No one. Then I turned toward the kitchen window. The stranger was still there, prying at the frame. He was still wearing his hood, his face hidden, his body hunched forward like a silent, menacing shadow. My eyes flicked toward the end of the street, and my heart dropped. I saw Lily and her friends walking toward our house, their soft laughter growing closer with every step. "No," I gasped. He would see them. He might do something to her. A desperate, reckless idea flashed through my mind. I couldn't wait for the police. I had to act. I had to scare him away now. I tightened my grip on the bat, took a deep breath, and cracked open the front door. My voice shook, but I shouted with every ounce of strength I had. "Hey, get away from my house! I've called the police! They're on their way!" The stranger froze, then slowly lifted his head. His gaze locked onto mine through the darkness, cutting through the dim streetlight like a knife. His eyes weren't afraid, they were burning with anger, hatred, and something else. Madness. That look would haunt me for the rest of my life. He said nothing, just stood there staring, motionless, like a living statue. Then, from down the street, the black van's headlights suddenly blazed on, flooding the house with a blinding glare like a beast baring its fangs. And then it came the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. The wail of police sirens, growing louder, closer, shattering the thick tension that had suffocated the air. The stranger frowned, glanced toward the noise, hesitated for a split second, then turned and sprinted toward the van. The engine roared to life, the tires screeched, and the van backed out onto the road, speeding off into the Halloween night. At that same moment, a police car pulled up in front of my house. 2 officers jumped out immediately. Lily and her friends froze at the edge of the yard, staring at me and the flashing lights in confusion. I exhaled shakily, still clutching the baseball bat with trembling hands. My entire body felt drained, but also unbelievably relieved. I had protected Lily. I had survived that Halloween night. The police searched the property, combing every corner, but he was gone. There was nothing left, no footprints, no evidence, only the crumpled "I see you" note in my pocket and a small crack on the kitchen window pane. The black van had vanished without a trace. No reports of a stolen vehicle. No record of any related crime in the area. I never found out who he was or what he wanted, why he chose me and Lily, why he appeared on Halloween night. Those questions still haunt me to this day. The police never found the man or the van. They said he was probably just a random intruder, startled by the sirens and fleeing before getting caught. But I know better. That wasn't random. He had been watching us. He knew I was home. That Halloween night taught me a terrifying lesson. Not every fear is imagined, and the worst horrors often strike when we least expect them. Even now, whenever Halloween comes around, I still feel it, that cold, invisible gaze from somewhere in the dark. And I know that some ghosts aren't made of smoke and stories. They're the predators who walk among us, hiding behind masks of flesh and silence. I've never looked at Halloween the same way again. The feeling of being watched, that shadow in the dark, it's burned into my memory. And one thing I'm certain of, I never want to live through another Halloween night like that ever again. Halloween night, 10:03 p.m. The alarm screamed through the damp darkness of Havenwood. It wasn't the siren of Detective David Miller's patrol car, but another one distant, echoing from somewhere deep within the streets, overflowing with pumpkins and candy. David, with short black hair and sharp eyes shadowed beneath the brim of his cap, sat pensively at his desk. He had just finished his shift and was about to pack up when the phone rang. Havenwood Police Department. Miller speaking, he said in his steady, professional tone, a habit that never changed, even though he was long tired of Halloween prank calls. But the trembling voice on the other end wasn't a prank. It was tiny, shaky, like a cold breeze brushing down his spine. Sir, my mom and dad, they're floating on the ceiling, like puppets, hanging up there. David froze, his whole body tensed. Where are you, kid? Tell me your address, right now. And a faint sob came through. The Blackwood Manor, on Elm Street. David knew that house. Who in Havenwood didn't know Blackwood Manor? The decaying Gothic mansion, abandoned for decades, was a magnet for thrill seekers and a treasure chest of ghost stories. It wasn't the kind of place a normal child would be calling from, and the way the kid described it, stay right where you are, kid, don't move, I'm on my way. Don't touch anything, David said, his voice dropping into a firm, serious tone. He hung up, grabbed his gun, switched on the siren, and sped off into a Halloween night that suddenly felt more sinister than ever. The jack-o'-lanterns lining the streets now looked like grinning skulls, and the laughter of children in demon costumes echoed like a call from the underworld. When David's patrol car turned onto the cobblestone path leading to Blackwood Manor, he nearly hit the brakes. The house was no longer a shadow in the dark. Lights glowed from within, spilling through dusty windows and casting eerie streaks across the leaf-strewn lawn. The massive oak door stood slightly ajar like a clenched jaw waiting to snap shut. David stopped the car and killed the engine. All sound vanished, leaving only the pounding of his heartbeat. 10:27 p.m. He stepped out, hand already resting on his gun. Havenwood Police. Anyone home? His voice echoed, hollow and small in the stillness, nearly swallowed by the deathly silence of the mansion. No response. Only a strange scent lingered in the air, sweet but rotting. David gently pushed the door open. It creaked wide, revealing a long, dark hallway faintly lit by ancient wall lamps. He stepped inside, eyes sweeping across the shadows. Each footstep landed with a haunting echo on the old wooden floor. Kid? Anyone here? He called out, anxiety and urgency rising in his chest. Still no answer. Everything was empty. The living room was coated in dust, and the kitchen was oddly messy, as if some horrific celebration had just ended. David moved deeper into the main living room, the largest room in the house, with a stone fireplace and an old CRT television sitting on a wooden cabinet. The TV was glowing faintly, casting a sickly blue light across the gloomy space. David squinted. The screen was nothing but static. He stepped closer, trying to focus his eyes. Gradually, the static began to shift, then form shapes. It wasn't an old news broadcast, nor a horror movie. It was him, David Miller, standing right there in this very room, on the TV screen. He looked down at himself, then back at the screen. Same police uniform, same skeptical, confused expression, same gun held tightly in his hand. But the version of him on the TV was staring straight at him, with eyes completely hollow, devoid of any life. A loud thud echoed in David's mind, as if some inner wall had just collapsed. Impossible. This couldn't be real. Then, the image on the screen began to twist and distort. The static swirled, forming a dark vortex. From its center, a tall, thin shadow emerged, slowly taking shape. It wore a tattered burlap mask, with two empty black holes for eyes voids so deep they seemed to swallow light. A torn black cloak hung over its frail frame, making it look less like a man and more like something that had crawled straight out of a nightmare. The masked figure on the TV slowly turned its head. The emptiness in those eye holes seemed to pierce through the screen, through the air, through David himself locking onto him. Then, slowly, it began to step forward. This wasn't an illusion. It wasn't a trick of the light. A thin, corpse-like hand reached out from the edge of the TV screen. Then came the arm, the shoulder, and finally, the entire body. The masked figure stepped out of the television, as if the screen were nothing more than a doorway to another dimension. It stood there, in the same room, just a few meters from David, completely silent. Its presence was a blatant violation of every known law of physics, every rule of reality. David couldn't breathe. He raised his gun, his arm trembling violently. "Stop, police, don't move." The masked figure said nothing, didn't even flinch. It just stood there, the silence between them more terrifying than any spoken threat. David felt a primal terror crawl up his spine, a cold that seeped into his bones. This wasn't human. This was something else. "I'm warning you for the last time," David shouted, his voice breaking in his throat. The masked figure remained motionless, the pitch-black eyes of the mask seeming to mock him. David aimed straight at the center of its chest and pulled the trigger. Bang! The gunshot tore through the silence, echoing like thunder. The bullet sliced through the air, right where the masked figure had been standing. But there was nothing, no scream, no blood, no body collapsing to the floor. The masked figure was gone, vanished like a wisp of smoke into the air, leaving David standing there, gasping for breath, gun still raised. The room sank back into deadly silence. Only the TV remained lit, but now it showed nothing but black and white static shifting, ghost-like patterns drifting across the screen like lost souls. From that moment on, David Miller knew his life. Everything he had ever believed in had changed forever. He had stepped into a world beyond reason, into a chain of supernatural events he could never escape. The Blackwood Manor had called him, and somehow it wasn't going to let him go. The next morning, the pale light of dawn filtered through the window of David's office, illuminating his sleepless, ashen face. He hadn't closed his eyes all night. The TV inside Blackwood Manor was gone, leaving no trace behind. The footage from his patrol car's dashcam showed David walking into the house alone, then firing into thin air. No masked figure, no sign of anything abnormal. "Miller, you all right?" Officer Rodriguez, an older man with a thick mustache, asked as he set a steaming cup of coffee on David's desk. "You look like you've seen a ghost." David just nodded, swallowing the bitter taste in his mouth. "Rodriguez, what do you know about Blackwood Manor? I mean, besides the ghost stories. Is it?" Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "Oh, Miller, whose footsteps are you following? That place is cursed. The Blackwood family vanished without a trace on Halloween night 30 years ago. Not a single clue. The whole family, gone." David felt a chill crawl up his spine. 30 years ago? Exactly which Halloween night? "The very same night as this one, 30 years back," Rodriguez said, nodding gravely. "The strangest part is, a young police officer named William Miller got a call that night too. A child's voice, saying his parents were hanging from the ceiling. He went there, found the house empty, and then he disappeared. No one ever found the Blackwoods or Officer Miller." David's world spun. William Miller, his father, the man who had vanished when David was just a child, leaving him and his mother with a lifetime of grief and unanswered questions. His mother had always told him his father was a hero lost in the line of duty, never to return. She refused to speak of that fateful Halloween night, perhaps because she didn't want to relive the tragedy buried in their past. It happened on Halloween night, 2024, in a quiet suburban neighborhood of Boise, Idaho. My name is Caleb Monroe, 27 years old, a remote software developer. Halloween was usually a simple night for me, handing out candy to kids, then settling in with a horror movie. But that night turned into a nightmare I'll never forget. I was sitting in the living room, sorting through the leftover candy after the trick-or-treaters had gone. It was around 8:30 p.m. The air outside sharp and cold, but a few kids still wandered the streets in superhero and monster costumes. I had just torn open a bag of Skittles when suddenly, the lights went out. Total darkness. My phone showed no alert from the power company, and the whole neighborhood had gone eerily quiet. I grabbed a flashlight and was heading toward the breaker box when I heard it. A knock at the back door, the one that opened onto the tree-covered yard. Who knocks at the back door on Halloween night? Through the glass, I saw a man in an orange utility jacket and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He knocked harder, as if he knew I was there. "Who is it?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "Marcus, with the power company," he said coldly. "There's an issue with the grid in this area. I need to check your breaker." I didn't open the door. The power company doesn't send people out unannounced at night. "Show me your ID," I demanded. He gave a dry, unsettling laugh, then stepped back into the shadows. I exhaled in relief until my phone buzzed. A new text, from an unknown number. It was a photo of me, standing in the kitchen, taken through the window just seconds earlier when I'd looked outside. Someone had been watching me. I locked every door, checked the security cameras, but none of them were working. Dead. I called 911, whispering about Marcus in the photo. The operator told me police would arrive in 10 minutes, but I knew how long 10 minutes could feel. Then I heard scraping from the basement, followed by a voice. Faint, but unmistakable. "He's inside. Check the other window." "Get out of here! I called the cops!" I shouted. The noise stopped, but a moment later came the sound of shattering glass. From the basement window, I ran to lock the basement door just as another message appeared on my phone. A video of me in the kitchen, filmed from outside, with the words, "You shouldn't have refused, Caleb." How did they know my name? I hadn't told anyone. Through the blinds, I saw a shadow move past. Then my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Helen, texted me. "Caleb, I just saw 3 people in dark clothes near your trash cans. 3 of them. Not just Marcus." I crept upstairs to my bedroom, locked the door, and opened the backup camera feed. 4 people. Not 3. 1 woman near the back door holding a knife. Marcus and 2 others at the basement entrance. I whispered into the phone. "There are 4 of them. Hurry." Then came a new sound, soft, deliberate footsteps on the roof. My chest tightened. I could see a figure crawling toward the chimney. "Someone's on the roof!" I yelled into the phone. At that exact moment, flashing red and blue lights filled the windows. The wail of sirens cut through the night. I watched the camera feed 3 figures sprinted into the darkness. But Marcus stayed behind for 1 chilling second, staring straight into the camera. Then he made a slashing motion across his throat and vanished. The police found the broken window, boot prints on the roof, and a knife near the back door, but no trace of Marcus or his crew. When they left, I got one final message. "You got lucky this time, Caleb. Next time, you won't." I sat there, shaking, realizing this wasn't just a random break-in. Something darker was at play, and I had been drawn into it. The next morning, the dread hadn't faded. I decided not to wait around for the next threat. Reviewing the backyard camera footage frame by frame, I spotted something on Marcus's jacket, a small triangular logo with the letter R. I zoomed in, faint but unmistakable. The first real clue. I decided to ask Mrs. Helen, my neighbor across the street, who had seen the 3 figures near the trash bins. Mrs. Helen, a widow in her 60s, was the type who noticed everything happening in the neighborhood. I knocked on her door, bringing a cup of coffee as a token of thanks. She invited me in, and as I recounted what had happened the night before, her face grew tense. "Caleb, I don't want to scare you," she said in a trembling voice. "But last night wasn't the first time I've seen people like that. Last week, I saw a black truck parked at the end of the street near old Mr. Jenkins' house. 2 men were standing nearby, dressed exactly like the ones you described. I thought they were road workers, but they didn't do anything, just stood there watching. I walked to Mr. Jenkins' house. The side window had been pried open, and inside were footprints on the dusty floor. Near the door, I found a handwritten note. Monroe, 1427 Oak Street, 8 p.m. My address written before everything happened. I took a picture of the note and called the police, but they merely took note of it. Feeling helpless, I searched the internet for the triangular R logo. A Reddit post mentioned a shadow crew that appeared in Boise every Halloween, dressed as workers, and linked to robberies or disappearances. Their trucks bore the same triangle logo. Then I remembered Redpoint Solutions, a company I'd freelanced for a few months earlier. I'd turned down a project after realizing they wanted illegal access to personal data, and I reported them. The company shut down soon after. Redpoint's logo? A red triangle with an R. Could this be revenge? I checked the strange number that had sent the text, but it didn't exist. That night, my backyard camera recorded a woman in black holding what looked like a scanning device. She raised a paper that read, "We know what you did." I called the police, but she was gone before they arrived. They found only muddy footprints. I went through my old emails from Redpoint and saw the name Marcus Reed, the same name from a news article about a thief arrested last year, wearing a hat just like the one Marcus wore on Halloween night. I printed the article and decided to go back to Mr. Jenkins's house with Ryan, a former Marine who lived nearby. Ryan came over, bringing a tactical flashlight and a handgun. We entered Mr. Jenkins's house and found a map of the neighborhood with my house circled in red, along with a detailed list of my daily routines. Another note read, "Monroe knows too much. Handle it before 11, over 1. Today was November 1st. My heart pounded. Ryan said, "This isn't just theft, Caleb. You've stumbled into something bigger." I told him about Redpoint, and we took the map and notes as evidence. On the way back, Ryan suggested I stay at his place for a few days, but I refused. I didn't want to run. If they were coming for me, I'd face them, but on my own terms. I returned home, reactivated every part of my security system, and reinforced the basement window locks. I also installed a phone tracking app, hoping that next time I received a message, I could trace it back. But what I didn't expect was that the confrontation would come sooner than I thought. That night, around 9 p.m., my phone buzzed. Another message from the unknown number. "Look out your living room window, Caleb." I hesitated, but curiosity and anger outweighed fear. I pulled the curtain aside, and there he was, standing under the streetlight. Marcus. This time, he wasn't wearing a hat. His face was fully visible, beard stubble, eyes cold as stone. He raised his hand, giving a small wave, as if greeting an old friend. Next to him stood the woman I'd seen on the camera the night before, along with 2 other men, all dressed in black, standing still as statues. I called Ryan right away while texting the police, sending them my location and a quick description. Ryan said he was on his way and told me to lock the doors and not do anything stupid. But I knew I couldn't just wait. I opened my smart home app and activated the outdoor speaker system I normally used for holiday music. I played a sound effect of police sirens, hoping to trick them. The sirens blared, and I saw the group flinch, glancing at one another. Marcus shouted something, and they started to scatter. But the woman didn't run. She walked up to the front door, knocked hard, and said through the crack, "You think this little stunt will save you, Caleb? We know you reported Redpoint. You destroyed everything." I didn't answer. Instead, I turned on every light in the house, hoping the brightness would make them back off. I ran upstairs and looked out the window. Marcus and the 2 men were gone, but the woman was still there, staring up as if she knew exactly where I was. She raised her phone, and seconds later, I got a message, a video recorded from inside my house, from the corner of the living room where I'd been standing just minutes earlier. How was that possible? I checked every corner, no strange cameras, no signs of a break-in. Then it hit me. Redpoint Solutions had once asked me to install a data management program on my personal computer. Could they have hacked into my webcam? Ryan arrived at the same time as the police. They searched the neighborhood, but Marcus and his crew were gone. The police found a black truck abandoned a few blocks away, with the R triangle logo on the door. Inside, they discovered ropes, duct tape, and a list of other addresses in the area, including Mrs. Helen's. The officer said they'd investigate, but warned me that this group might be part of a larger criminal network, not just local to Boise. They advised me to leave my house for a while, but I refused. I'd lived here my whole life, and I wasn't going to let them drive me out. Over the next few days, I changed all the locks, upgraded the security system, and deleted every Redpoint-related file from my computer. I hired a cybersecurity expert to inspect my network, and they found spyware installed 3 months earlier, the same time I'd worked with Redpoint. I sent everything to the police, but there were no leads. Marcus and his crew had vanished into thin air. A week later, just when I thought things had settled down, I found a package at my doorstep. No sender's name, just a small box. Inside was a USB drive containing a single video file. I plugged it into an old computer with no internet connection, and the video played. Marcus, sitting in a dark room, staring straight into the camera. "Caleb," he said, his voice eerily calm. "You think you've won, but we're not finished. Red Point was only one piece. You've touched something you shouldn't have. See you soon." The video ended with the red R triangle filling the screen. I handed the USB over to the police, but they found no fingerprints or traceable data. I still don't know what Red Point truly was or what network I stumbled into. But one thing's certain, I'll never feel completely safe again. Every night I check the cameras, lock the doors, and keep a baseball bat by my bed. Halloween isn't fun anymore. It's a reminder that sometimes the real monsters don't need masks.